What is going on, Raptors Nation? What is going on? It is Luca back here with the Raptors Nation podcast, coming to you live on this Thursday, February 13th. A late edition of the pod, but nonetheless better late than never. We got a lot to get to in today's show. Wanted to talk about Brandon Ingram's introductory press conference. Said a lot of great things. We're going to talk about his expected return to action, and then what to expect for the rest of this season. And then at the end, I will open the floor to questions and kind of do a Q&A with the live chat. So hope you're all doing well. Do me a solid, guys. Smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, share this, and be sure to leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. You can find this on Apple, iTunes, and Spotify. The Raptors Nation podcast coming to you every single Thursday as there's a different buzz in the air. The feeling is good. For the first time in a while, the vibes seem to be back, and there is optimism. Optimism for the future with this Raptors team, as the next couple of months is going to be a little difficult to get through this final hurdle, this last bit of the regular season. But after this team just has a different feel to it. There is light at the end of the tunnel as Brandon Ingram is in the mix. You got the draft, and all of a sudden you could be looking at a Raptors team that could be in prime position to compete a year from now. So there's a lot to be excited about indeed. As I first want to talk about Brandon Ingram officially being welcomed to the Toronto Raptors. He officially signs that contract extension, 3-year, $120 million. He's got a player option in that third year. As Brandon Ingram, he is in Toronto, and my main takeaway from that presser is he wants to be in Toronto. We have never seen anything like this. When has an all-star caliber player willingly wanted to come to Toronto, willingly wanted to choose to play here, as Ingram has done just that? He wanted to come here over Atlanta. I know this isn't free agency, but hell, it's the closest thing to free agency where the Raptors traded for Ingram and they knew they were going to re-sign him, and that they did. And Ingram, he's excited to be here. He wants to be here. He wants to be a part of this team rebuilding a winning culture once again. As according to multiple reports, Ingram had targeted Toronto or Atlanta as his ideal landing spots and ultimately picked the Toronto Raptors. That is per Josh Lewenberg. And I mean, it got off to a great start, right? You look at Ingram, he had the goodwill gesture of waiving his $2.1 million trade bonus. It's not a lot of money, I mean, to him, but it does do a lot, and it gives Toronto a little more financial flexibility for the rest of the season. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to give away $2.1 million, but he chose to do that. So there have been so many signs that suggest that Ingram wants to come here. And how about some of the things he said? We got to get into some of the things that he said. And I mean, he had this quote, which I thought was great at the top of it. At the beginning of the year, every time the schedule comes out, the first team we mark is Toronto. And I don't think it's ever for the team. It's for the city, Ingram said. And also, I just felt like I needed a fresh start. A fresh start somewhere where guys played hard and they listened. I heard good things about Scotty Barnes. I heard good things about Emmanuel Quickley. And I thought it was a good fit offensively and defensively. And Darko Rajakovic had a part in that too. That means a lot. The fact that Ingram just said that every time he would take on the Raptors, whether as a member of the Lakers or with the Pelicans, that he had the matchup against the Raptors, which was only once a year, because of him being in the Western Conference and playing the Raptors twice, once in their building, once in Toronto, and he had that marked down. That is awesome. Like Brandon Ingram, I believe there's a video too when he was a member of the Pelicans saying that he did really like Toronto, he enjoyed the city, and this quote basically sums up where he's at. He wants to be in Toronto, and he wants to be a part of this, and he said that he really likes Oxtail in Toronto. And that's what Darko said of Ingram. And Darko went on to say he really likes the city. He really likes our fans. He really likes our young guys. He's impressed with what he saw and the potential that we have here. And he's been embracing our culture. And Ingram went on to say, first thing that I heard from the Raptors is they want me They want to make me an all-star again, and I'm going to be a big part of what they do moving forward. I want to come here and learn. I want to come here and be a sponge, shift the culture, make it a winning culture, and come in here and just listen. Do whatever coach needs me to do and go out and try to be an example every single day. So I believe Ingram said all the right things here, guys. Like, Ingram, obviously, health's going to be a big concern. It's going to be a big factor, but the Raptors are betting on their medical staff that they can right the ship with Ingram just as they did with Kawhi Leonard, and they believe they got Brandon Ingram's best years ahead of them. And what's great, too, is you got a player who is entering his prime, and he wants to be here. Again, something that this franchise has never had, where an all-star caliber player wants to play for the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors have never been looked at a destination. You either had to draft them or just get him in a trade. And I know this is getting him in the trade, but this is a guy who's now locked up for the next couple of years. And the 3 years is the most that the Raptors could have offered him an extension, but less than 5 years, he would have been eligible in free agency. But the player option is interesting because in this case, it gives Ingram an opportunity to hit the open market again at the age of 29, and the incentive is to stay healthy and then reestablish his value in Toronto. So I think this is a great deal for both sides, because the Raptors, they can then judge at that point, okay, is Ingram worthy of another, max extension? Is he worthy to keep him around? We've had 2 years to see what he can do. And then for Ingram, you're betting on yourself to cash in on another payday in your most valuable earning years. So I like that this is a fair deal for both sides, looking at it from the perspective where the Raptors are going to see what they have in Ingram for the next 2 seasons, see if it's worth keeping him around and paying him. And then for Ingram, you're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to really go out and show out in these next 2 years that you're deserving of another maximum type of deal and another big payday. So I actually like the contract from that perspective. 3 years is going to go by quick, and we're going to know soon whether or not this partnership is a home run or not. So you look at this deal now for the Raptors. Of course, the biggest talking point is the cap space. You look at what the Raptors are working with right now. As it stands, they're roughly $10.5 million under the projected luxury tax, with 11 players under contract for next season. And you got to keep in mind, they're still going to have to pay their first round pick and sign at minimum 2 more players to fill out the roster. So what's going to be big is that pick, because if they get the 7th pick, that player is going to make $7.5 million next season. But then if they luck out and get the number 1 pick, that pick's going to make 13.8. So that's definitely a problem that the Raptors would love to have, getting the first overall pick, and then you got to figure out how you're going to pay him and stay under and still be able to be under that tax. But what is interesting is the Raptors got to just get under the tax to avoid being a tax team before game 82 of next season. So theoretically, they could roll out an expensive group into next season, start the season out, and then if they really want to get under that luxury tax, they can make a move at next season's trade deadline. So whether or not they decide, hey, we want to run this, it's worth being, over the tax because we got a competitive team. We'll see it through. They've done it before for the championship year, but again, this is an organization that doesn't like going over the tax in non-championship, non-competitive years, but maybe they come out of the gate guns a-blazing and exceed all expectations with this group, and they decide, you know what, let's pay into the tax because we can actually do some big things this season. Then maybe they eat it. But again, what's nice is if things aren't going to plan and they don't want to be an expensive group, they do have until the end of next season to get under the tax. So maybe a trade happens at the deadline. Maybe they decide, you know what, there's not a good fit here with RJ and BI and Scotty. We're going to try to trade RJ Barrett, and we're going to get under the tax that way. So the Raptors do have time in that sense to get under the tax, so they don't necessarily have to make drastic changes this summer. But they could. That's definitely a possibility. But overall, I mean, Brandon Ingram, he wants to be here. I think the contract is fair. I think it's going to end up being an even better contract if he stays healthy. The Raptors have a lot of faith in that medical staff, and we just got to wait and see how it works out. Now, speaking of when Brandon Ingram is going to come back for the Toronto Raptors and actually make his Raptors debut, that is still an unknown, and that is still unclear. And that's something that I don't know if we're going to see anytime soon. As BI's expected timeline is still very much up in the air, because during his presser, somebody asked about it, and he said that there's no timetable for his return. But he did say that he's done a lot of work on the court and in the weight room as he looks to make his return, hopefully soon. Those were Brandon Ingram's words. And then Darko Rajakovic, when asked about it, he said that the most important thing for Ingram is to get him healthy for the summer and for next season. The plan is to be smart with his ramp up and reevaluate after every 2 weeks. That is per TSN's Josh Lundberg. So that doesn't sound to me like Ingram is close. Sportsnet's Michael Grange initially reported that he was going to be out at least a month, so that takes us to March 13th. And honestly, given where the Raptors are, record-wise, given what Bobby Webster said about this team having their eyes on the upcoming NBA draft, I don't expect to see much of Ingram. And if I had to say how much we're going to see of Ingram, at this point, I'm thinking we're probably going to see him in 10 games, maybe even less than that. I definitely do think we're going to see Ingram, because I think this team would want to see him mesh a little bit with the core before the end of the season versus waiting it out until next season. But don't expect BI to play much. I think we'll see a situation where BI's back in the last 2 weeks of the season. So it might even be less than 10 games. Maybe it's 6 or 7. Because I don't think he's going to be back in a month. And I realistically see him closer to that end of March. So however many games are left, that's what I see him playing in. But again, honestly, this is the best approach by this basketball team. I don't want to see the Raptors rush back Ingram. I'm excited to see him play. I want to see what he looks like with the Raptors, and I'm sure all fans do. But you want to nail this if you're the Raptors. You want to be able to stay in the bottom 5 and get a top pick, because you're really going to love your future at that point. And the future's really going to look bright, as the thumbnail of this live stream suggests. So for you to do that, you don't want to necessarily put your best foot forward. So let BI take as much time as he needs. Make sure he's 110, 120%. Do not run the risk of, bringing him back too soon. And it looks like they're going to take extra caution with him. I mean, to reevaluate him every 2 weeks, season's almost done. There's only 27 more games left. I think this is the right approach. You want to be able to get Ingram at full health. You want to see him with this group, yes, but you don't want to sacrifice what the goal is for the remainder of the season. And, what the expectations are. And really, what to expect for the rest of the season, it's going to be a lot of the rookies. Like Bobby Webster said it. We've already seen it. The Raptors' 5 rookies have gotten a whole lot of playing time as of late. Jacoby Walter, Jonathan Mobile, Jamal Shed, Jamison Battle, Urish Chomchi. And in that game against Philadelphia was interesting because 4 of those guys were on the floor in the fourth quarter of a 2-point game. And Urish Chomchi was actually the youngest player in the NBA, and he was out there. So I like that. Unfortunately, the Raptors were able to win that game just because I think maybe the 76ers are trying to tank now. I mean, looking at what Embiid did, passing up a wide open 3, it really looked like maybe they were trying to throw that game. I don't know. But I think what to expect for the rest of the season is the Raptors to give these young guys ample opportunities, let them play, let them cook, and you're not necessarily worrying about wins and losses. You're going to win games here and there. It's an anomaly. I mean, for as much as the Raptors played well in that Sixers game, they could have very well lost that game. And I think that was more about their opponent in the Sixers being dysfunctional than you having to worry about the Raptors all of a sudden going to win a ton of games, because they got a quick reality check in that Cleveland game when they were healthy, minus, of course, Jakob Poeltl and BI. Those are 2 really big pieces, but they had their barbecue core out there, and they got their butts kicked. So I think we are going to see more of that, especially if the Raptors prioritize player development. You're going to see some ugly performances mixed in, sprinkled in with some nice performances where they are able to win. But I think the main goal for this team is do whatever it takes to stay in that bottom 5, man. And look, it's going to be tough because, Brooklyn's going to be bad. The Bulls might not win too many more games. The 76ers might join the tankathon, and they might shut Joel Embiid down. Really, they should do that at this point. But for the Raptors, it's all about putting yourself in the best position of trying to land a top pick. And, even if you're not going to land a top pick, you got to try your best to put yourself in that position. At the end of the day, it comes down to the draft lottery gods, the draft odds. But really, you don't got a whole lot to play for this season. You've already made your intentions known that Ingram's not close. Management has come out and said, we like this draft a lot. You just got to eat dirt for 2 more months. And I promise you do this right, we're not going to entertain tank, hopefully for the foreseeable future. So that's what the Raptors got to do. They got to try their best to try to, play hard, yes. I'm not saying to throw games, but they might have to get creative there at the end. Because what scares me is towards the end of the season, like the Raptors schedule coming out of this All-Star break is going to still be tough, but towards the end of the season, you got a lot of matchups against Washington, Portland, like bad teams. And are the Raptors, and then if you add BI for a couple games, are the Raptors going to be able to stay down? So that's what's probably going to be the most interesting part about the rest of the season. But from that standpoint, like, it's all about next season, guys. I know people want to see a winner, and look, I'm dying to win. It's been a while that this Raptors team has made the playoffs. What is it now, 3 years? This is going to be the 3rd straight year that they missed the postseason, so we're dying for a winner here, but don't mess it up now. Just eat dirt for the last couple of months, last 27 games. They're going to go by quick, man. And then all of a sudden, you got a draft, you got an offseason, you know the group you got going into next season, and you can rock. You can go off. I posted it on X. Go follow me, at Luca Rosano 3. It's amazing to see what the Detroit Pistons are doing this season. They're the 6th seed right now in the East. They have had such a dramatic turnaround from last season. I can honestly see the Raptors having a Detroit Pistons type leap next season if they play their cards right and if things go well. I can see that, like, the East is not strong. And I think that reinforces the fact that if the Raptors do this right, you can make a case they're going to be a top 6 team next season. Like right now, the Pistons are only 3 games over 500, but they're the 6th seed. So that 6th seed is up for grabs. I know, like, Orlando's really good. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, but the Heat are kind of, I want to say, in limbo. Like, they're banking on Wiggins and stuff like that to be big for them. The Hawks are so inconsistent. And then after that, you got a bunch of teams that are probably packing it in, right? The Bulls, Sixers, Nets, Raptors, Hornets, Wizards. So the Raptors play their cards right, and I think they're for sure a playing team next season. And they might even be in a position to snag a top 6 spot, that 6th seed next season. So, like I said at the top of this show, there is a lot of optimism, a lot more optimism in these last few days versus the beginning of the season. And moving forward, I think there's more of a definitive identity and just a feel that good days are coming. So hopefully that indeed happens. So anyways, guys, okay, so that's gonna conclude my bit. I'm gonna open the floor now. Any questions? Let me know any comments you have on any of my talking points. But we're going to turn the floor to the chat as, again, drop a like, subscribe. Appreciate everybody in here on this Thursday night. We're snowed in. We had a snowstorm here in the GTA, I believe Toronto area too. But, yeah, it is the All-Star break. Raptors don't play for a week. They're not going to be back in action until next Friday. So they're going to be off a whole ton of time, a little vacation for them. We got the All-Star weekend. Grady Dick going to be in the Rising Stars event. And yeah, it's that point of the NBA season. I guess it's the unofficial midway point of the NBA season. So the Raptors, they have 27 more games left. Right now, they are 13th in the East. 17 and 38 overall. And they go into the break with a bottom 5 record. Chosen says more life. What's going on, Chosen? Hey, what's going on, Abbas? What's going on, John Bow? Times are changing, stable management in a great city, excited fans, and with a group of talented young players on the rise. Super G said it perfectly. We are going to need a stretch five. Yak is not a starting center on a playoff team. I think this team is committed to Yak. I think for sure they see it through with him for next season. A guy that's an all-star caliber that actually wants to be here is a big W. I'm so excited for our future, says Jordan T. My only hopes are the Philly don't get their picks and that the Raptors get a top 4. I'm thinking 5 to 10 games. Raptors schedule getting easy. We might start winning a lot of games. That's what I'm afraid of. What's up, Sweet Chili Philly? What up, Luca? Thank God this rebuild could be over before we know it. Yeah, like I just said, I think best case scenario, this team could be in a completely different position this time next year. What do you think we should do in the draft if we land top 5? Well, I think VJ Edgecombe is a very popular pick for the Toronto Raptors right now. If we don't land a top 3, do you think they would consider trading the pick? I don't think so. I think the Raptors, honestly, what you see now, there's the possibility, I would say, maybe for an RJ Barrett trade, but I don't think the Raptors are going to do anything drastic maybe this summer. I could be wrong, but because they have until the end of next season to get under the luxury tax, like the NBA trade deadline's the new offseason, it feels like, in the NBA. So I feel like if a trade does go down, maybe it'll be at the midway point of the season. But I don't think they'll trade their pick. Yeah, a lot of snow, man. A lot of snow. I think they'll probably try to get VJ if they don't get in the top 3 because he has potential to be the elite defensive PG. Yeah, I agree with that. I think VJ would be their guy. Well, I didn't need them to tell me that. I think it's obvious at this point. RJ does look like the odd man out if this Raptors team does want to get under that luxury tax. But again, they have until next season to do it. So if RJ doesn't get traded this summer, that doesn't mean he's safe because they could always flip him at next season's trade deadline. But if the Raptors do want to get under that tax, that is the consensus says RJ Barrett is the odd man out. RJ probably asked for 35, 38 million. Yak's going to get 32 to 28 million a year also. Reports said BI might not even debut this season. I'd be shocked. I would be shocked if we don't see BI at all. I do expect them to see, like, I really do think we will see him at some point. But, again, if it gets to a point where, he doesn't play, I mean, it does help the Raptors tank, so it's not the end of the world. But I'd be surprised if he doesn't play at all. Yeah, I guess it makes that a little bit more murky, but knowing this Raptors team, I don't like they're always a team that like waits it out. Like I don't think there's a rush per se right now to trade anyone, but it is something that's kind of looming, right? With the whole like we're going to be an expensive team. So we got to figure that out unless we want to be an expensive team because we feel like we can win a championship next season, which I don't think this team's going to be a part of that equation. I mean, maybe if they get Cooper Flag and they really luck out, I still don't think you're a championship team in year 1 of Cooper Flag. No, let me rephrase that. You're definitely not a championship team, even if you get Cooper Flag. 2 to 3 years from now, definitely. But yeah, it's they're gonna have to make some decisions on that front if they want to get under. I think I'll probably play 7 or yeah, I would say like if I had a bet, like 5 to 7 games, I would say. No need to worry about a RJ Yak or IQ being traded. Let this thing have a chance to breathe. And that's where I'm kind of leaning towards with my thinking, Rich. I feel like what we've learned from this Raptors team is like they're usually giving things benefit of the doubts. They're usually like not rushing anything and they like to see things through. So I don't see them. The more I think about it, I don't see them rushing an RJ trade this summer, especially if they don't have ample time of seeing them together. That is why I'm now more leaning to if they do move RJ, which I still think is a strong possibility, it's at next season's trade deadline, only because you want to give this like group a fair shot together to see like, hell, like what can this team do together? And I think like having BI show up at the end of the season for 5 to 7 games might not be a big enough sample size. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Raptors go into next season with this group and just wanting to see how they play with their top pick and then making a big decision at the trade deadline. Again, like we've gotten to a point where the NBA trade deadline is the time where like big things happen. Like it has almost replaced the NBA offseason. Like I guarantee you this NBA offseason, I might be wrong because the NBA is always a spectacle, but this NBA offseason is probably not going to be as crazy as the trade deadline. Maybe we get a KD trade, but from the Raptors' perspective, don't expect a whole ton. Like this is their group plus their draft pick. And obviously there's some other things like Boucher, but they're not going to re-sign Boucher. I've already come to that conclusion unless like, yeah, like unless they bring him back for like absolutely nothing just to fill out the roster. That's the only scenario. But basically like this is who the Raptors are bringing into next season. And then I think we'll see like another big move if it comes down to that at the deadline. Well, I said it at the top of the show, Brandon. I think 120 is fair. It just comes in lower than his maximum, which I think was 3 year 144. Um, but I think the shorter contract, we'll see, right? Because like what I said a minute ago, like I think it allows a flexibility where like 2 years from now, if this goes horribly wrong, like you move on from Ingram. It is what it is. Like at the end of the day, you paid him, but you gave up a pick that you're hoping doesn't turn into anything substantial. And then if it works great and he's warranted getting paid, you keep him around and you pay him to another lucrative deal, no problem. So I like the shorter contract here. I think in terms of the money, I think all things considered, like it's fair. At the end of the day, like I'd rather pay Brandon Ingram 40 mil than had paid Fred 40 mil. So put it that way. I actually like that, but I probably would say flag Bailey for me. Flag Bailey Harper, Edgecombe, and then I agree with that. You'll make it work, man. It'll be interesting what the lineup is. Maybe you do Jakob, Barnes, Cooper. Yeah, I guess Bi you're gonna have to play him at the 2. Yeah, like that'll be interesting to see what happens if they were to get Cooper flagged. Like, what does the lineup look like? But again, that's a good problem to have. I hope the Raptors find themselves in that situation. Yeah, the Raptors are not a team that like to be in that luxury tax when they're not a contender. So yeah, in all likelihood, Boucher's gone. They need every bit of financial flexibility that they can take. Yeah, I thought he was like 6'6". I think you need Abaji for his defense, man. I'd rather keep Abaji as a bench piece. Like you need like that's what I'm right now. What I'm concerned with this team is their defense, their defensive identity, because like we've seen it now, and I know this is not going to be their starting lineup, but like Grady, I love you, man, but like he looks like a six man at this point. Like his defense, I know everybody was bad in that Cleveland game, but his defense has been awful. And we see it. When you have Quickly, Dick, and Barrett, like, that is just a disaster waiting to happen. So, like, that's what I'm concerned about. Like, I know BI, he does have some good stretches of defense, but how is the Raptors defense going to look? I think their offense is going to be awesome, but again, they're going to Quickly, especially, he's going to have to up it there. And if you do have Quickly, Barrett, Ingram, like, is that going to be good enough defensively? And obviously Scotty is your best defensive player, but right now, I mean, you see it with Grady. Like, the defense has just been tanking. And I think Grady, like, he's got to start to realize and accept the fact that you're going to have to thrive as this team's sixth man. Like, I believe that's the role the Raptors have for Grady for next season, unless, Jacoby just outplays him and really outshines him. But I think, like, between one of those two guys, like, one of those guys is your sixth man at this point. And to be honest, like, maybe they start getting Grady ready for that. And maybe you experiment with having him come from off the bench for the rest of the season. Like, do something. But, like, it's clear that, like, Grady is no way, shape, or form starting next season. Uh, I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. Probably not. I lean towards probably not. Do you prefer Jacoby or Grady? This is a good question. Probably Jacoby just because of his defensive upside. Like, Grady, I think, can be the better shooter and just offensive player. But, man, like, some of his lapses defensively, like, you got to be able to have some sort of, like, defensive ability out there, or else you're just going to be a liability. But, again, that's why six-man role suits him. He could be, like, I don't want to compare him or, like, even say this, but, like, a Kyle Korver just kind of comes in, like, and, like, hopefully, like, he can get hot and, like, just give your team instant offense. But I think, like, in terms of overall skill set, I'm probably higher on Jacoby future-wise. Flag makes us a better defensive team. Oh, definitely. Yeah, but in that case, they're looking at the younger player, and again, Abaji is the better defender in that scenario. But Abaji, I mean, it's interesting what happens with him as well, but I do think the Raptors see him as part of this puzzle. Ace Bailey will be the heir to Ingram. That'd be an interesting lineup. If you have Ace, quickly Ace Bailey, Ingram, Barnes, Jakob, that's a really good five. Yeah, his finishing hasn't been good either. I think he's been one of the worst finishers in the league this season. Yeah, I always said if we can't get Cooper Flag, Ace Bailey would be the next best thing for me. But right now, man, it's tough to get in that top three. That bottom three is going to be tough. And then even if you do get into that bottom three, you got to have the lottery gods not screw you over. Just ask the Pistons about that. That's a team that should, in theory, have had the last number one pick, and they always got shafted with the number five pick. So that's why I'm actually glad the Pistons are having success. I think if there's one franchise that deserves it, it's them. Uh, right now, right now, if the season ended today, the Raptors would have a 42.1% chance of landing in the top four and just a 10.5% chance of the number one pick. That's why the bottom three is so lucrative, because you have a 14% chance at the number one pick and you got a 52.1% chance to remain in the top four. And right now, those bottom three teams, Washington, you're not catching. And then you have New Orleans and the Jazz. And you're 4 wins ahead of Utah and 5 ahead of New Orleans. And honestly, at this point, I think the Pelicans, they're trying to play this thing like a tank. They want a top pick. They're packing it in for the season. So I don't know if you can catch them. And really, I don't know if you can catch Utah. So at this point, the Raptors' best chance is to just remain where they're at right now. And in all likelihood, they probably just remain number 5 unless they blow it and fall. But I don't think the Raptors can move up. Like even Charlotte, they got 13 wins. Raptors are +4 on them, and the Hornets have been a mess too. So let's just say the Raptors, like at this point, they play their cards right. They have some wins here and there, but for the most part, they lose. But again, I'm worried about Philadelphia because as I'm looking at this over at Tankathon, Philly's lost 5 in a row, but they're still 3 wins ahead of the Raptors. 3 wins ahead of the Raptors. So let's just say the Raptors finished with the 5th worst record, which is what they're at right now. Again, 42.1% chance to land in the top 4. So obviously less than 50%. And then you do have a 10.5% at the number 1 overall pick. So not terrible, but given where this team's at, yeah, those extra wins that they got, like what might end up screwing the Raptors in terms of getting into that bottom 3 is when they had that, 8-1 stretch, when they had no business winning all those games with Davion Mitchell as a starter. That might end up screwing the Raptors when you look at the bottom 3. But in all likelihood, it does look like the Raptors could be locked into that 5th worst record. We need a backup big, no lies. Yeah, I mean, right now you're rocking Orlando Robinson until the end of the season. You got Chomchi, but he's obviously still a project. So I do think the Raptors are going to have to get a backup big as well somehow. Like maybe they end up drafting one, but then again, you have Chomchi waiting in the wing, but they're going to need a backup big, like a reliable backup big. I don't think Orlando Robinson's cutting it as a true backup big, and then I don't think Chomchi's ready yet to take on that role full-time next season. The Raptors definitely jumped. Yeah, they jumped to number 4 that year. So they got lucky that year. Can they get lucky again? Raven says, Luca, do you think we are making a draft day trade? I do not think so. I think whatever pick the Raptors get, they keep. And they don't make a trade. Raptors usually have not made trades on draft day, so I don't expect them to all of a sudden make a trade. Luxury tax, bro. I would say Ace Bailey or Edgecombe if I had my pick. 100% they will make a move, says XJ. What do you think that move will be? I would say 100% they don't make a trade on draft day. I just don't think whatever pick they'll have, they'll end up keeping it. I don't see them moving RJ on draft day. Is there anybody on 905? Nobody who really stands out to be honest. If they get Dylan Harper, it's possible IQ gets moved. Unfortunately, but I think RJ will be traded. Yeah, like if they do make moves, I think it's like what we saw last season with it like being to try to get more picks in the second round. I don't think it would be like an RJ Barrett trade though. So unless you meant that, like it's to get like more draft capital, that's definitely a possibility. Because remember, like the Raptors got really busy at last year's draft because of that. When they acquired more picks, especially for the second day. And those players ended up being good for them with Shed and Chomchi. The offense is clunky with IQ because he isn't a true point guard. Yeah, what game was it? I think it was the Cleveland game where he just didn't look good in a lot of situations. Like he had like some turnovers and just like didn't have a good sense of like being able to set things up on the floor. But like he did look good against Philly, but in that Cleveland game, he had a lot of instances where he just needed to do a better job of like organizing the offense. Yeah, they're super close. So I just said it at the top of the show. They're really going to cut it tight. Like if they get the number one pick, it's an anomaly. They are going to be a luxury tax team. But if they get like the number 7 or I think a number 5 pick, they're going to have like just over 10 mil to like sign that pick and then 2 more guys to fill out the roster. I have a lot of faith in Shed. And I think that's where the franchise is going. You know, by trading Davion Mitchell, they basically said that because Davion Mitchell's not old. But I think, you know, another reason why they made that move, other than he's a restricted free agency, they don't see him long term on this team, is they have a lot of faith that Shed can be that backup point guard. And I think right now he's slotted in as that backup for next season. Why does everybody think Philly's going to get flagged? I've been actually seeing that a lot on X. Like, do people really think Silver's going to rig it for Philly? I mean, they just won the Super Bowl, so maybe this is the Eagle or the Sixers' way of winning their big thing. Well, I think what he meant by that question is like, can he emerge? How I took that question is, it's like, I guess, can he thrive as the backup point guard? So right now, the Raptors, like, unless they end up drafting a point guard, like Shed right now is the backup for the foreseeable future. Thoughts on Tristan Thompson? Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about this. That's crazy, man. Like, what the hell was Tristan Thompson trying to accomplish? I did not have Tristan Thompson picking a fight with the Raptors on my bingo card. Seriously. I mean, like, did anybody do him dirty? Like, that was so random. Like, Donovan Mitchell was even like, bro, what are you doing? Like, if you saw his facial reaction, he broke the unwritten rule, right? Like, you're killing the Raptors. The game's done. Like, just dribble out the clock, bro. He dunks it, starts a fight. Shed and Scotty get up in his face. They have to be separated. I thought Scotty and Tristan were going to fight. And then the worst part is Tristan Thompson, he doubled down because, like, Darko basically, like, called him out in the post game, saying how, like, he found it disrespectful and he had no class. And then Tristan Thompson said, you want a full court press with under a minute left in the game when you get cracked by 30. This will happen to you. Lose for lottery and be happy, buddy boy. Hopefully you and most of your guys see the light at the end of Bobby and Messiah long-term plan. Bless up. Stay warm in my city. He talked a lot of trash after that. Look, what I'll say is this. Do I think Tristan Thompson's a clown? Yes. He's a bench guy trying to talk like a starter. But if you're the Raptors and you don't want to see that happen, don't get your ass kicked by 30 points. Or like, don't get blown out to obliteration. And so, like, you could definitely prevent that from happening. So, Raptors got to, be better if they don't want to get clowned like that. But at the same time, I don't know what Tristan Thompson's trying to do. Like, especially what's funny in all this is he's from here. Like, he's a Brampton native player. And, he's trying to pick a lot of fights. And it sucks that we won't see Raptors and Cavaliers until next season. Because that was the final regular season meeting between the two teams. And obviously the Raptors are not making the playoffs. So we got to wait till next season. Trey Johnson, that's pretty good. Yeah, it was really wild. He's been a Raptor hater from Cleveland days. Yeah, but it's just weird, man. It's like, imagine being from here, like your roots are here. Like, I know you went on to have, I know we clown on him, or I just did, but like he's still a wealthy man. He still played in the NBA. Not many can say that. He still won an NBA championship. He still represented Team Canada on the basketball stage so many times, on the world basketball stage. And it's like, you're from here. You should take pride in that. And like, yeah, I don't know. I guess he found it amusing to pick fights with the Raptors. I really don't know what he could have been pissed at. I think it was just him trolling. Like, I think he, or basically what he was mad at, I think, was because apparently the Raptors were still full court pressing with under a minute. So I guess he took that as like a shot. And he's like, if these guys are still going to play hard, I'm going to score this bucket right now. Like, I'm going to go up for this dunk with the game over. So Tristan had a blonde moment, lol. What a fill in the blank. But I don't know. I did not see that coming. But you know what's funny? At least it created a funny story following a very, very forgettable game, because the Raptors, they did not play well against Cleveland. So at least it stirred the pot, and it got people talking right after, going into the All-Star break too. So yeah, I saw that. That kind of sucks. Like, to be honest, that's probably the best part of NBA All-Star Weekend now. I mean, that was hype last year, and they're not doing that anymore. Like, I don't know about you guys. And in closing here, I guess we can talk about All-Star Weekend because it is on the horizon. I'm just not excited about this weekend, man. Like, I could care less at this point. It's going to be cool to see Grady involved, but other than that, don't have any interest for Saturday. The dunk contest has been terrible. The last good one was what? The last good one was when it was here in 2016. Since then, it's been an afterthought. Yeah, I guess the three-point shootout's pretty fun, but like, no Sabrina and Steph. Like, that was better in my opinion than the three-point shootout. At least it was entertainment. And then the All-Star game, like, I don't know what to expect. Like, maybe it's going to end up exceeding expectations, and it might end up being a brilliant idea, but right now, just looking at it and the format of it, like, I don't think it's going to be any good. And I think KD said it. A lot of people said it, like current players. Like, they're not a fan of this new format. Why don't we just go back to, like, the traditional East versus West? Let the players wear their original team's jerseys. Go back to the olden days and just ride it out like that. But, like, you're trying to have all these changes. First you had the target score. Now you're trying to do this. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be good. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it ends up surprising us and it's entertaining as heck. But right now, I have my interest level for All-Star Weekend is like a 2. Like, I have no interest at all. And I think, like, Obviously, I'm going to tune in. But, yeah. Other than the stuff that Grady's involved with, like, I don't really care what's going to go down this weekend. Like, maybe the three-point shootout, that's about it. But, yeah, I don't know what to expect with that All-Star game format. I think it can be either really, really surprisingly good or just terrible to a point where it's worse than the target score one. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I don't know how you. I think the only way you can save All Star Weekend is like doing what the NHL is doing right now, of like you do like USA versus the world. I think that's the only way you can save the game, because I think at that point you're gonna want to play well. You got the pride of your country on your shoulders. The international players are gonna want to make a name for themselves. The U.S. guys are not going to want to lose to the international guys. So that's how you make that competitive. And Adam Silver said that they might be doing that. I think that's the only way you make All-Star Weekend exciting again. And you have so many great international players that it would be a very good game. And I think the international team might actually win that game, to be honest. So it's like, that's the only way I think you save All-Star Weekend, is if you do Team USA, international, forget about the egos, let those guys play for the pride of their country and to show the world if the NBA is still an American game or if it's now an international game. Like, that would be fun, in my opinion. You know, you would have Luca, Jokic, Wemby, all on a team. Like, that would be amazing. Giannis, like, that team's winning. And then against USA, right? You have Tatum, LeBron if he's still around, KD, Edwards, like that. Tell me that's not a fascinating matchup. So, like, that's what I would do. I do like what Wemby said, and hopefully Wemby takes it upon himself, but one guy can't save it. I feel like everybody's got to be bought in. And honestly, the NBA All-Star Weekend and game might be entering like Pro Bowl territory, where like the NFL Pro Bowl is like unwatchable now. Like, I have not tuned into a Pro Bowl in the last 5 years for a minute. Like, I feel like it's a flag football game now, is it not? So like the NBA doesn't want to go down that rabbit hole, because like at least for the Pro Bowl, it's before the Super Bowl, so it's like you can miss it. But like this, like, you want it to be good. It's at the midway point and you have a lot of eyeballs on you. Like, you want it to be entertaining. East versus West, go back to old school. I agree. I think it's definitely Sabonis. I would have said Trey, but he got in. But I definitely think it's Sabonis. Yeah, that would be my vote too. I think if I had it my way, Team USA versus Team World would cook. If you're not going to do that for whatever reason, I don't know why you wouldn't do that. Is it because, like, egos? Like, you don't want people's feelings getting hurt and, like, all that? Like, I don't know. But, like, okay, if you don't want to do that, like, at the very least, go back to Team East versus Team West and let them rock their jerseys. Like, that was dope. Go back to the 2000s, and maybe I'm dating myself here, but those All-Star games, they might have not been entertaining, but it was cool to see, like, the different jerseys represented. And, like, I don't know, we watched it. Like, so you guys, sometimes, like, changing things ain't always going to fix things. Like, you got to just stick to the basics, I feel. Man, like, you're telling me USA versus World wouldn't be hype? Like, I just named the lineups. Like, that's an epic matchup. Like, and there's something to play for there. There's pride. Like, if I'm on Team USA, it's like, nah, like, the international guys ain't, you know what? And then if you're like the international guys, you want to prove that, like, the NBA is an international game now. And, like, those would be stacked teams. Like, there's enough international talent to be able to do this. Before, you wouldn't have been able to do this 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Like, it would have been a mockery. But now there's enough amazing international talent that you can put forth an absolute spectacle. Yeah, that's what comes to mind, man. 2001. I just always remember, like, yeah, Carter rocking that Raptors jersey that you have in your profile pic, and like everybody else rocking theirs. Like KG with that classic T Wolves. Shaq and Kobe with that Lakers. Like, it looked good, man. It looked really good. What's the last time they did it? It was 2019. Yeah, Canada would be in World too. That would be, yeah, I would think so, right? Canada would be in the World. Or if you really want to get creative, you do what, like I said, what the NHL did. And you have 4 teams. You have Team Canada, Team USA, and then I guess you got to figure out like 2 international teams. You got to kind of like figure out a way where you can have 2 rosters. Like what? Slovenia and Spain or something? Like something like that. Like would even be entertaining. Or you just have Canada join Team International. So like you have Shea on the team international team. Yeah, I think international would definitely win. But anyways, guys, I'm going to leave it at that. I just wanted to close with some thoughts on NBA All-Star Weekend. But I appreciate all of you guys for hanging out, joining me for this one. The Raptors, they will not be in action until next Friday when they host the Heat. 27 games left. The main takeaway from this pod should be that you should be excited as a fan. For the first time in the last couple of years, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. There is some optimism, and this Raptors team, they are in a good position. And what helps it is that Ingram, he wants to be here, and let's just fingers crossed, he stays healthy and he can return to being that all-star player. So, anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts. If you're watching this on the playback, comment your thoughts down below. Appreciate everybody in the chat. You guys have been awesome. Appreciate everybody in here. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review. You can find this podcast on Apple, iTunes, and Spotify. And go and follow me on X at Luca Rosano 3. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching. This is Luca signing off. I'll catch you all again in the next one. Take care.